Happy Tuesday, everybody. Welcome into GC Live Talking Tuesday nights. It's a little bit different this Tuesday evening because, of course, South Carolina wrapped up the regular season this past weekend with a huge win over Clemson, ending the Tigers' 7-game win streak against South Carolina. And in the process, the Gamecocks finished the year in the regular season, at least 8-4. 13th time program history, at least 8 wins in the regular season for South Carolina. And on top of that, 2 top 10 wins to close out the year. Back-to-back, something that had never been done in program history. There's a lot to get to tonight. We will look back at this past weekend, certainly, but I also want to start to look ahead because what has transpired since Saturday around, 4 o'clock? Around that time, a little before that, when South Carolina officially ended that game and won, a lot has took place. Obviously, offensive coordinator Marcus Satterfield, he has accepted the job over at Nebraska. So there's an OC opening for USC. We will discuss that. I also want to discuss the possibility of what bowl games South Carolina could be playing in. But then getting into the transfer portal, that's something that's going to pick up next week. Players could announce right now that they want to go into the transfer portal. Nothing will be official, though, until December 5th. That's next Monday. We'll hit on some of the other key dates to keep an eye on. We'll talk about the dead period. Dead period right now is taking place. That will change on Friday. That is something different. I've had conversations with a couple other coaches across the country about how this is different. And we'll kind of get into that because some people might be wondering, all right, why isn't Shane Beamer, why isn't some of these coaches, why aren't we seeing them at high schools taking their pictures as they usually would after that Clemson game, going to visit players? Well, it's because there's a dead period right now. So we'll get into that as well. Intern Joe, he is with us this evening. I know he's Joe, where do you want to begin tonight? Do we look back at the weekend that was and go from there? Because
might as well.
We're seeing the comments right now talking about the bowl games, Joe, right? Gator, Citrus Bowl. We can get into the bowl games. And then in addition to that, and Joe just reminded me of this right before we hopped on.
Right.
Playoff rankings are coming out. Joe will keep an eye on that. So as soon as we get an update, I got to get some water over here. As soon as we get an update on that, we will get you updated with it. And women's basketball. They're in action tonight. We will get you updated on that. Reason why I'm dying over here, I just housed the super beef, which is basically just is a roast beef sandwich they make up north because I hadn't ate all day. I got back from Gillette covering the Patriots. I'll tell you this, speaking about, we'll transition from that. Saw Kevin Harris the other day because Kevin's right next to the door where the media walks in for the Patriots locker room. And it feels like every week I'd see Kevin. And I've been going down to Gillette a little bit more this week because it's a Thursday night game. I've gone down the last 3 days. And they'll have their game on Thursday night against Buffalo. And we'd walk by each other, especially during that time period in which South Carolina was going through a rough patch, right? You know, with losing to Florida. And then I see Kevin against Tennessee, and he's just like, okay. He's like, we'll see what they can do this week. And they went. It wasn't even one of those things, Joe, where we even said anything to each other. He kind of just looked at me. Eyes were raised, and he's just like, damn. That's all I said, damn. So it's neat because we had DJ Swearinger on Mixing a Water Monday. He talked about just what it meant to him. We heard from Ryan Brewer a week ago on Mixing a Water Monday. If you've missed any of those interviews, go back on the Gamecock Central YouTube page. You can catch them all. It's been special to hear from them. So, Joe, I say all that. My rude ass. Let me get to you. What do you want to start with, buddy?
Mike, I think we got to start with Clemson, right? Then we'll get into the future. We'll just kind of progress through it. And, I mean, you were right. I mean, what a weekend it was. It's been a while. This fan base has been waiting for it. I certainly was down in 5 points for a little bit on Saturday. If you saw me, you didn't see me. But, I mean, it was wild. This is the most lively I've seen the city since I've been here. And, you know, it's crazy. And I said it, too, on Saturday after the show. You know, it's the most proud I've been to be a Gamecock and to be enrolled at this university. Like, it's crazy, the vibes and the feelings that we have for this university right now, top-ranked women's basketball team, Beamer doing his thing. It's crazy. And that win was, it's huge for the program, huge for recruiting. And, I had so many friends from back home texting me about it, like, hey, look at the Gamecocks. And, when I first got here, everyone was kind of, oh, why would you go to South Carolina and all this stuff? And, it's nice for a change to people to kind of be like, oh my gosh, I wish I were at South Carolina and that kind of thing. And, it's a great time to be a Gamecock, great time to be involved with this program. And I know for a fact that recruits are seeing this and, obviously drawn to the program, tweeting about it, doing their best. I know our guy Pup Howard, he's doing his best, trying to recruit on Twitter actively and that kind of thing. And so I guess we'll start with Clemson. It's a good place to start. And then we can work our way. Once these rankings come out, we can start talking about the future.
All right, Joe. Dealer's choice. So that's what we're going to start with tonight.
Yep.
Being able to go to Clemson after what they did against Tennessee. And we've talked about this throughout the course of the season. There's a lot of things that took place this season that South Carolina was able to do, which we just haven't seen in recent years. And obviously a lot of that, it's easy to say during the Muschamp era, right? But the big thing is even going back to last season, Shane Beamer's here, learning how to win, learning how to close out games, learning how to do things that from a program standpoint, either A, you hadn't done in a long time, or B, you had never done in program history. So you go to Clemson a week after being able to do something that you had never done before, and that's being able to beat the living crap out of a top 5 team when you're unranked, and you did so by putting up 60-plus points. And you ended Tennessee's hopes of making the college football playoff. You did that a week ago. And like we saw against the A&Ms of the world, right? What happens when you do something like that? And I know it's not the exact same A&M, the Tennessee win, but a win's a win, right? They did something that they hadn't done before, which is beat the Aggies. Then you have to play a game the next week. And you have to be able to flush it. I think that was a real concern going into this game. I said that in the post-game show. I thought South Carolina was going to cover, but I didn't think they were going to win. And I think the reason being is I felt like they were getting closer to getting over that hump of, okay, this is what we did last week. Now we got to flush it. Because they hadn't proved it yet against a caliber team like they did against Tennessee. So that was something that I just didn't know what we were going to see, Joe. I just didn't know what to expect. I wanted to believe that they would just go out there and just say, screw it, let it ride. Let's just do what we need to do this week. That's exactly what they did. I just didn't know if we were going to be able to see it, just because when you look at the entirety of the season, in the regular season, there was just too much inconsistency on the offensive side of the ball to make you believe that is what was going to happen. You might have said, all right, Clemson, they're not as good as they've been in the past. Maybe that record, the ACC has been better in comparison to the last couple of years. But with that being said, maybe that record of, 10-1 going into the USC game, maybe it's not a true indication of how good they really are. Or maybe they're not as good as their record indicates. But still, I'm like, all right, they're going to Death Valley. Haven't played there since 2018, Joe. I wanted to believe that South Carolina could come out and do what they did, but until we actually saw it, and because they did that, man, I understand things are going to change. We talked about the coaching change already with Marcus Satterfield. We're talking about the possibility of guys maybe declaring or going to the portal, all that kind of stuff, which every team deals with. It's part of the norm now. But at least for right now, man, you have to be feeling good about where this program is headed and just the future of it.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. And you said it best. I mean, last year, this team was back and forth and a very momentum team. And I am just seeing that South Carolina is ranked 19 in the college football playoff rankings. I believe somebody commented that too. 19, yep. Colin Taylor's story just published. So that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, Mike, going back to it, like last year, this team was very back and forth. And they couldn't really hold on to momentum and, really win a string of games in a row. And we saw that at the end of the year. nobody expected them to, beat Tennessee and let alone carry the momentum into Clemson and at least put up a fight, let alone win. The energy throughout the building was all confidence on Tuesday before this Clemson game, and I think a lot of people thought it was just because it was a rivalry week. You kind of have to get up for that anyways. But I mean, I think this team did a great job at carrying momentum. Like the offense, when I asked Spencer, like, how do you do it? He's like, it's kind of the same game plan. You kind of carry that confidence with you. You had everything clicking on all cylinders. So you kind of just take it with you into the next game. And, Beamer does a really good job. I will say that's one of his best strengths is, being able to, I guess, keep the team level, trying to keep them from getting complacent at where they're at. It proved, in arguably the two biggest games of the year. One could make a case for Georgia, but that was really early on in the year, and you don't necessarily know, who your team is, and you had a lot of guys banged up. So, I mean, in the two biggest games of the year, they not only beat Tennessee, stunned them, and blew them out, but then they went into Death Valley and snapped Clemson's 40-game home win streak against your bitter in-state rivals that have beaten you the last 7 years in a row. It's a huge win for the program, Mike.
And I think, too, and I do want to get into what this win means with Marcus Satterfield. I know he just left. We're going to talk about the OC changes, who South Carolina, some of the big board that our colleague Chris Clark has put together. And I know there's other names out there. I know Bobby's mentioning, Dan Mullen, and then Joey says, Dan Mullen hates recruiting. I did have an opportunity to cover Dan Mullen when he was at Mississippi State. I covered, it was 2015. It was Dak Prescott's last year at Mississippi State. I also covered Ole Miss that year. Hugh Freeze, I think it was actually one of his last seasons over at Ole Miss before everything kind of fell apart. Bryles O'Reilly. I know Riley's name has been mentioned a lot. We'll get into that too. But I do want to bring up, though, is this. Because we could talk about the play. Marcellus Dial, unbelievable. Unfreaking believable. I think Shane Beamer said today he was on 107.5 The Game. And one of the things he mentioned is one of the stats that he was told from his coaching staff was that Marcellus Dial was targeted 10 times, did not allow one catch. DJ Swearinger, when we did that interview for Mixing a Water Monday, we taped it immediately after the game on Saturday. I should say after the post-game show on Saturday. And DJ made dang sure to say, hey, Marcellus Dial, my name, and to give him his flowers. He performed tremendously on a totally different level. And I'll say this about Marcellus. There's been times this season where it's like, is he going to start to break through? Then he has some nice plays, but it's just trying to put it all together. That game on Saturday, and I think I'm going to, steal the phrase that DJ said, which was, that was NFL tape, NFL draft tape worthy right there, his performance. Now, where I want to go to with the Satterfield talk, okay? Bottom line is Satterfield's not here anymore. So there's no need for people to be piling on stuff anymore. I'm not saying that's what's happening right now in the comment section, but there's no need, okay? It's over with, right? But where I want to go with this is, in a sense, South Carolina, and their fans included, should be thanking Marcus Satterfield. And this is the reason why I say this, Joe. If South Carolina does not have the type of offensive performances against Clemson, against Tennessee, they don't win those games. Now, special teams, we understand what kind of role it played this past weekend, okay? No one's saying that didn't play a role. But the offense played a big role too. And it was probably one of the better games that Marcus Satterfield called. I know some people are going to be like, well, what about the pick six? It's not on Sat. Sat's not the one throwing the football. The game itself, you could see what they were doing, and they were able to execute a lot of things. Now, that mean everything that he did or that the offense did on Saturday, I agree with, right? You're at the 1 yard line and throwing interceptions like it's, Russell Wilson. No, I don't agree with that. But again, looking at the big picture, I liked what they were doing. So I say all that, though, Joe, because of what they were able to accomplish this past Saturday, because of what they were able to accomplish the week before against Tennessee, we talk about being able to beat top 10 teams back-to-back weeks to end the regular season, because you finish the regular season with 8 wins, which, as I mentioned before, oh, by the way, in the 100-plus year history of South Carolina, this is just the 13th time the Gamecocks have had 8 wins or more to end the regular season. So I bring all that up because, as Beamer mentioned on 107.5 The Game today, this job is more intriguing in comparison to where it was 2 years ago for the offensive coordinator position. And if South Carolina ends the year 6-6, I'm not saying no one's looking at what Beamer's doing and everything, but it's just different. That perception of it's different. 8-4, you're getting the buzz. You talked about it. You know, you grew up in the Midwest. You're having buddies that used to bust your chops saying, why'd you go to South Carolina? I cover the Patriots every day. I'm going in, hey, that was a good win for your team. My team, first off, Joe, you already know this. I'm not a fan. I just cover the team, okay? I didn't go to the university. But people are recognizing what's going on with South Carolina, people that have no clue what's going on down there. So I bring all that up because it's hard to sit here today and say without Satterfield, because there are some people, and it's okay if you're here watching this program. We appreciate you watching GC Live Talking Tuesday nights, whether it be on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. But if they got rid of Satterfield, I'm sure some people, it's going to be like, you know, arguing with a brick wall. But I think some people who wanted to see Beamer move on from Sat after the Missouri game, right? Maybe the Florida game too, because I'm sure some people say, well, maybe they would beat Florida. Okay. That doesn't happen. I really don't think that happens the last 2 weeks. I don't. I think Satterfield changed things up to a point where he simplified it, and we can make a case as to why that wasn't the case all season. I understand that. But all I'm trying to get at is no one's saying that you got to invite Sat over for a cup of bourbon. No one's saying you got to send him a Christmas card. All I'm saying is what he was able to do the last 2 weeks certainly helped himself out as he goes to Nebraska now, and he has a fresh start. But he also helped South Carolina's the perception of the program, because without this offensive performance over the last 2 weeks, this is a 6-6 team. This is a 6-6 team. And I'm not saying that this job isn't appealing. It's just not as appealing.
Absolutely. I agree. And, Shane talked about it. You're right. He talked about it on the radio today, and I think he was on his teleconference, I believe. But he was like, he joked that, once he thought he was done reading through his text from Clemson, he was getting all kinds of texts about this offensive coordinator position. It's a very attractive job in football simply because they've gotten the national attention. They made a splash with Tennessee and then followed it up with an even bigger splash, beating in-state rival Clemson, who has been on the national stage for years. What Dabo has done at Clemson is kind of the blueprint of what you want to do for a school. I can remember growing up, Clemson wasn't even close to what they were or what they are now. And so for them to kind of build up to the national stage and be the almighty Clemson that, Hunter Beamer liked when his dad wasn't the head coach at South Carolina, So, I think it's a very attractive job. And I think Satterfield set himself up to kind of leave or exit on a good note, right? I was in a Twitter space Saturday night after the game, and a lot of people were talking, pretty highly of him. Obviously, there were the couple of fans that were still like, still get him out of here. Like, we hope he leaves, hope he goes to Nebraska. And obviously, like, he did. But, I think he set himself up for kind of a happy ending, if you will. And from what I understand is that, Satterfield put a little bit more, option in the play call to the players these last couple of weeks. He listened to his players a little bit more and was very open in the play call. And we saw that. There was a clip posted by Gamecock Football in that last play of the game. Everyone was talking. Everyone had an input. And so, Mike, I think it just tees him up to kind of leave South Carolina on a happier note. And, the people who think that we should have extended him, or the people who think that, he could have stayed, should have stayed, whatnot, that's just not the reality anymore. And so now the coach or the search for an offensive coordinator starts now, and you got to start building towards the future. And it helps, like I said, because the Gamecocks have been elevated to a national stage with those 2 massive wins.
Well, I'm going to let intern Joe dip back for a sec. If you guys want to call into the program, give intern Joe a call. 803-567-3796 to hop on the program tonight. GC Live, talking Tuesday nights. And that clip, and I know Joey brought it up, cool clip of the offense. This is what you were talking about, Joe, with the offense telling Satterfield, get the ball to Juice, and, they'll end the game. And, of course, that's exactly what they did. It's a cool moment, and I'm not trying to take away from it. Stuff like that happens all the time. And I'm really glad that, and I think Justin King tweeted this out saying that, he appreciates the access that South Carolina gives him and his team and the trust that they have between the creative service team and being able to do that, because some coaches, they won't let you do that stuff. They won't let you get that close. But I bring that up because, again, Satterfield's not here anymore, as he's out in Nebraska now with the Cornhuskers. But I saw some people saying, like, see, this is what we're talking about. Sat doesn't know what he's doing. No, it's a sign of a good coach. And I would argue that maybe that was probably, a little bit of the issue at times. Maybe Sat could have had a little bit more trust and faith in his guys. And I'm not saying that wasn't the case all the time. But what I'm trying to get at is, I think, we talked about it throughout the course of the season at times that maybe, and I don't know if it was Skarnecchia that we talked with about this, but basically getting, a square and trying to make it fit into a circle. It just, just because you have this perception and this idea of what you want this thing to look like from an offensive standpoint, it's okay to mold it to what you have to work with and make it work. And I think over the last couple of weeks, especially the last 2 weeks, we saw that, and it was executed to an absolute T. Absolute T. So that's that. Peyton says, it'd be nice seeing Carolina in the college football playoff rankings. That is right. Number 19, if you're just tuning in. Number 19. Not to be a Debbie Downer, it really means absolutely nothing. It's nice. It's nice. But ultimately, when we talk about the bowl games in a little bit, ultimately what it's going to come down to is what happens on Saturday night. We'll know where South Carolina is going to be playing after Saturday night. I understand the bowl selection show will be on Sunday. We're going to find out by Saturday. We'll know. And even though he's not a colleague of mine, we're directly from Gamecock Central or on 3, Brett McMurphy is one of the best in the game when it comes to knowing which teams are playing in what bowl game. So that's the guy to follow on Saturday night. He will definitely be able to let you guys know. Big Red, hey, Mike, who's supposed to take over OC duties for the bowl game? It's an interesting question. It's an interesting question, Big Red. I'm looking into it right now. I do know that Shane Beamer is going through end of the year meetings right now with both players and coaches. It's unique with the fact that, and I say unique just in terms of recent years, and obviously for Beamer and his staff, they made it to a bowl game last year. But yes, you have a bowl game, but they're going to address those things right now. So while they do that, I'm sure there's conversations going on, whether it be, with Justin Stepp, whether it be with Freddie Kitchens. I'm sure, I mean, even Pete Lembo, I'm sure it's going to look very similar to what they've been doing throughout the course of the season. But I'm sure there's going to be some wrinkles that you're going to be able to tell, like, all right, something's a little bit different. When we find out, and again, nothing has been, put it this way, it's not a done deal yet where I feel comfortable enough saying, okay, this is the person that's going to be calling the plays in the bowl game. But I feel like that will be something that will be shared sooner rather than later, probably in the next couple of days. But again, it's not like Sat leaving surprise South Carolina. I know I saw some people when they saw the report, I can't remember, and I apologize. I don't remember if it was ESPN or not. I try to make sure I give credit to reports, but saying that, South Carolina tried to make a push for him to stay. I don't know how it's going to play out in terms of what they're going to do with an OC next. We're going to get into that. We'll mention some of the names. But in terms of that short term, I'll have intern Joe hop on. Intern Joe, I don't know if you're hearing anything yet. But I think, look, I think ultimately what they're going to do is they're going to stay true to what they've been doing this season. I wouldn't be shocked if Lembo gets involved, just because and that's not to say that he's not doing anything as a special teams coordinator. He's the best at what he does. And I want to get into Lembo's contract in a little bit and what he looks like in comparison to the rest of the country, and, that $1 million mark, which I know I've seen a lot of Gamecock fans bring up. I could see him maybe being asked to be a little bit more hands-on with the offense this week. And the reason why I bring that up is this. This isn't unusual for teams to go into a bowl game and a coach or two isn't there anymore and you have to shuffle around a little bit. But to me, I'm sure Lembo will be asked to do something to help the offense out, whether he's calling the plays or not. Now, Freddie Kitchens is there. He's an analyst. You would think it would be the natural move. Freddie was a quarterback in college at Alabama. He was Mr. Football in the state of Alabama coming out of high school. He's coached on both sides of the ball, whether it be at the college level, whether it be at the pro level. To me, it would make the most sense to have him slide into that OC role. But that doesn't mean that will be the case. I do believe that we'll see Freddie coaching the quarterbacks, though. Because to me, that just makes the most sense. And you don't have to do as much, shuffling around. But Lembo might be asked to help out a little bit with the offense, to just try to, take some of that load off of Freddie.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. As an intern, I really don't get those kind of scoops yet. But
I'm trying to give you a softball. I say softball. I'm trying to tee you up. I have an idea, but I'm just trying to,
I wish I had some of those scoops. I mean, I can give you my idea of who I think, what direction they'll go in. I think one of the names that really isn't being talked about is Justin Stepp, the wide receivers coach. I think he might have some say in it. I like your take about Lembo. I wouldn't be surprised if they gave him some say, being a former head coach and whatnot, and a successful one at that in the MAC at Ball State and whatnot. But I mean, I don't know, Mike. I mean, I think Justin Stepp is certainly going to be involved. He's done a lot. I know he's been involved pretty heavily with some of the offensive meetings and stuff like that with Satterfield and whatnot. But I mean, other than that, kind of what you said too. I don't know if Freddie's going to get involved either. He'd be a logical choice there, and I feel
he would at least make sense. He would at least make sense to work with the quarterbacks.
Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
Then there's not a lot of movement in terms of and I'm making this up. This isn't going to happen. But all right, let's move Justin Stepp to work with the quarterbacks. Let's do this. I mean, I can think back to a couple of years ago. It was the Outback Bowl, Hayden Hurst's last year. So that would have been the 2017 season. Outback Bowl, and it would have been the 2017-2018 season. And Bobby Bentley, and he moved around a little bit. God bless Bobby Bentley. I believe, I'm just going to double check here. I believe he was coaching the running backs that season. I know he coached the tight ends a little bit. Want to make sure. Okay. So Bobby Bentley was coaching the running backs in that 2017 season. Bobby Bentley was asked to be the quarterback coach that week. He coached Jake. And I bring that up just because, they moved on from Kirk Roper. There's shuffling sometimes like that. I just try to think in terms of what makes the most sense. What would be the easiest transition? Now, it's something else that can't be overlooked, because not every head coach is like this. Some head coaches like to be a little bit more hands-on in certain departments than others. Beamer doesn't have necessarily a set position that he's coaching. Okay? Again, sometimes coaches are involved with a positional group more than other coaches are. Beamer has kind of been really hopping around more than anything, which, again, shows his humility, which shows his trust with the other coaches on the staff, that he has faith in them, that he doesn't necessarily have, even though he does to an extent, he doesn't have to have his handprints on every single movement in that building. Some coaches are anal like that. They want to make sure that every little thing done in that building, they have their handprints on. he has the confidence in the coaching staff that he's hired to be able to do their job. Obviously, he's going to add input. Obviously, he's their boss. So they're going to relay things back to him, and he might say, yeah, let's do it this way or this or that. But because of this, because of the unique situation that they're in, I think it allows them the ability to be a little bit more flexible. And if Shane has to help out with a certain positional group just a little bit more, right? Just a little bit more. I'm not saying that, Shane's going to be calling the offensive plays in the bowl game. I wanted to say on Saturday. We're so used to saying that. But you also have two other guys that have been head coaches. You have Freddie Kitchens, of course, okay? And people can say about what they want about Freddie Kitchens coaching in the NFL. Bottom line is he brings experience of coaching at both levels. And he played at the University of Alabama, okay? He understands what the heck he's doing. But then you also have a guy like Pete Lembo, who also has coaching experience as a head coach. But on top of it, and I think this is why I think I could see if Freddie were to be calling the offense this week, for the bowl game, excuse me. The reason why I could see Lembo helping out on the offense, Joe, is because Lembo has been there already for a year. And while Freddie is, he's got acclimated to the players a little bit, Lembo knows those guys a little bit more. So, again, maybe Freddie's working with the quarterbacks. Maybe he's doing, whether it's calling the whatever you want to call it from a job title standpoint. But I would not be surprised if Lembo is involved with the offense a little bit this week. Now, what I do want to bring up, though, Joe, is looking at, I want to make sure I pull this up because Chris Clark has been doing a great job. If you haven't already, go check out Gamecock Central. Chris Clark has done a great job. He's got his offensive coordinator hut board 2.0 already out, okay? So he's been staying busy with that. So give that a peek. I want to see. This is his report from today. I wanted to go back and see if we could find the first one. Should have had that pulled up. But look, the names that are going to get brought up, and I've seen a lot. Okay, Kendall Briles from Arkansas. And this is coming from Chris's report, some of the stuff that I'm reading here. He writes, this candidate runs an interesting offense and has led efforts that greatly improved Arkansas's offense relative to where it was before his arrival. Briles worked for a season in Fayetteville with current South Carolina wide receivers coach Justin Stepp. There have been some rumbles over the course of the last year that he is open to an exit from Sam Pittman's program. So I bring that up because, again, that's a name we're going to see a lot of. And I do want to get back to this question about actually, I'll just answer right now. I don't think he was 100%. I don't think Lloyd was 100%. He was banged up. Same with CBS. I think he tried to do everything he could to play. But to go back to this question, though, looking at some of the OCs, certainly, I think Briles is the one that stands out to me. And it's not just because of what he's done from an offensive standpoint, the explosion. And I understand Arkansas didn't have the type of season I think some were expecting them to have this year, Joe. But, Briles inherited a team that was averaging 21.4 points and gained 340 yards per game in 2019 prior to his arrival. They scored 30.9 points a game. That's the most since 2015. And they were racking up 441 yards a game. So I just bring that up because he's proven in this conference that he's capable of putting an offense together that can have success. But what's really intriguing is that nugget about that relationship with Justin Stepp. And I've mentioned this before. You need your offensive coordinator and your offensive line coach to be in sync. But, man, it does not hurt to have an OC and the wide receiver coach already having some type of rapport with each other. That can only help this offense if Briles were to be the guy.
Yeah, Mike, absolutely. I mean, I love the Kendall Briles option. Another name I really like is Garrett Riley. I mean, I think if you can get him in here and pay him enough, he'd do tremendous things for this offense. You've seen what he's done for TCU it has been a heck of a year for the Horned Frogs. So I think Garrett Riley is one of the top offensive coordinators, and let alone just commodities in college football right now. I mean, he's been thrown in for a couple of these head coaching jobs. So, I mean, I think if you're Ray Tanner and you want to go get a guy like Garrett Riley, you got to act fast, because Garrett Riley's phone is probably ringing off the hook right now, and he would be a splash for Beamer. And I'm sure, he might be one of those guys that's interested, because he coached, or Beamer coached underneath Lincoln Riley, as we all know, at Oklahoma. So I know there's rapport there, and I know Lincoln is he's publicly talked about Shane and, given him the praise he's deserved, what he's done at South Carolina. So, I mean, I don't see why Garrett Riley's not an option as well. And a big one too. I think it would be a huge splash. And I mean, I know at least from my standpoint, my opinion is I think he's number one on your big board. He's somebody you really want to go get, because, like I said, he's one of the hottest commodities in college football right now. And we've seen what he's done with TCU's offense. They were a dormant program, and then he's just kind of built it up. And this offense is one of the hottest in college football.
Philip brings up a real good point, and it was one that I overlooked. Yeah, I mean, the fact that Zeb just has a very unique – he's in a very unique position. I could certainly see them leaning on Zeb heavily for the bowl game. I don't know why that went out my mind, because the fact that he's played with a lot of those guys before. So, again, I don't think it's crazy to think – I just don't – what I'm trying to get at is I just don't think Beamer wants to be shuffling things up too much. I mentioned the thing with Lembo. That's not to say Lembo's going to be out there calling plays, but the fact of the matter is Lembo has that head coaching of experience. So whereas a guy like Zeb, yes, he played that position for your own freaking university a year ago. He understands that playbook. We've heard not just from Satterfield, but we've heard from Shane Beamer as well about his knowledge during the interview process when they were bringing him on to be a GA. So, yes, I'm sure they have a lot of confidence with him. Do they have confidence to the point where, he'd be calling the plays? Probably not. Working with the quarterbacks? Absolutely. Again, I feel like it's going to be one of those things that Beamer's going to try to do whatever he can not to shuffle too many pieces around. Zeb certainly has been coaching with the QBs this season. There's a couple of things that I started that I do want to get back to. And Justin brings this up. I think I mentioned, I feel like I mention this every time there's a coaching search. Most coaches or an opening. Most coaches already have a list of guys for each position that they would hire if they needed a guy. So when you go into a coaching search, right, and they brought Beamer on board 2 years ago. We've talked about this before on other platforms, but for those of you that have missed it or just aren't aware how the process goes, when a coach goes in, they usually have, and it depends on what coach you're talking about, but they have their tiers: tier A, tier B, tier C, tier D. Sometimes you'll have tier D, but usually 3 tiers, A, B, C. And when they go in to meet with the athletic director, assistant athletic director, they'll list out, all right, this is who I'm thinking about at running back, receiver coach, this and that, okay? That list is constantly being updated throughout the year. And I'm sure for a position like Marcus Satterfield, after what we saw from this offense a couple weeks back, I'm sure it was something that was being looked at. Who could be open at that position, right? And again, that's not to say South Carolina was going to straight out fire him. His contract was going to be up. So you have to be constantly preparing for yourself. And this is a question I think I asked Beamer last year, because with the talented coaches that they do have on this staff, Joe, at any given time, someone could leave. Someone could get asked to go to the NFL. They could do this or that. And that brings up the question about Freddie Kitchens. Aren't there rumors Kitchens wants to get back to the NFL long term? I wouldn't be surprised by it. I will say this, though. Take it for what it's worth. I think we've mentioned this before. We try to downplay it by not mentioning it when Freddie first got here. But I think it's one of those things. It's like can't hurt to say. Freddie's daughter, she goes to the university. So I'm sure this has been a very unique opportunity for Freddie to be able to be around his daughter a little bit more, be around family, which when you're a coach, I had this conversation with Greg Atkins right before his son Nate got there. It was going to be a unique opportunity for him to be able to be around his son. Now, does that mean that Freddie would just say, all right, I'm staying at South Carolina because of that? No, but it's just an extra layer. It's an added layer to the mix. Okay. I feel like if the right opportunity came for Freddie, yeah. Is this a long-term spot for Freddie? As an analyst, certainly not. That's usually a position that you'll stay in a year, if two. We'll have to wait and see if he were to stay on staff. Does he get elevated to the offensive coordinator position? Does he get elevated to another, quarterback? Whatever the case may be. Is there other movement from a coaching staff standpoint? But that's one thing that I would say about that. And then the last thing, again, we're kind of hopping around here trying to answer some of these questions. Will says, what chance that Spencer plays in the bowl game? I feel like at least if I was Spencer, and I know not everyone's going to love hearing this. If I'm Spencer, my mind is I go out there, I have a great bowl game, and then I'm declaring. Because then you end the year on 3 great games, assuming that he would go out and have a great game in the bowl game. So, because to me, Joe, Spencer is the type of player, we've seen him before. We saw it back in the spring. I remember seeing him back in August when all of us had an opportunity during those open practices to the media, at least the beginning portion. And you see Rattler when he's, throwing in just shorts, right? Or, he just has the helmet on. He is going to impress a lot of people at Pro Day. He has a strong arm, good mechanics, tight spiral, quick release. He's going to look good in shorts, right? The old saying, oh, he's going to look good in shorts. He's going to look fine at Pro Day. There's no question about it. What he needs to do, though, is the question is being able to have enough tape where scouts are going to say, you know what? The Spencer that we've seen to close out the year for South Carolina, that's the Spencer that we expect to get if we draft him, if we, give him a camp invite, whatever the case may be. So I bring that up because, to me, what we've seen from Rattler over the last 2 weeks, it goes to show how talented the guy is. It goes to show everything as to why so many people were speaking so highly about him when he got to South Carolina. And while it's not all on Spencer, some of it can go on blocking, some of it can go on drops, some of it can go on just miscommunication. I brought this up the other day, Joe, on that safety. I don't know what the hell happened. I'd love to find out. I'll look into it and try to get some clarity about it. On the safety, South Carolina, there's 3 offensive linemen blocking one of the D linemen. 3. Triple teaming them in the linebacker game right up through the middle, and that's what caused the sack. So I bring that up because it's plays like that where it's difficult to say, oh, that's on Rattler. It's like if Rattler has time, what is he going to do? Well, we've seen that. So that's why I'd bring that up. So again, at least with me, Joe, I think what it's going to come down to is this. Rattler is either going to come back next season or he's going to declare to the draft. I can't see him transferring out. Regardless, and I don't say it hurts. I don't want to say it doesn't help South Carolina or it hurts either way, but the fact that Satterfield is gone now, regardless if Rattler declares for the NFL or he comes back, he's going to have to learn a new playbook. So I don't know if that's something that hurts South Carolina's chances of getting him back. On top of it, and it's just the reality, we don't know who's going to come back next year for USC. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. There's been an incredible last 2 weeks for USC football. But hypothetically speaking here, and I'm not saying these guys are gone for sure, but Jaheim Bell, Juice Wells, Marshawn Lloyd, you start going down the list, Austin Stogner, even though some of those guys do have the ability to come back, Joe, next season, there's also that possibility where they don't return. And if you're a Rattler, okay, I got to learn a new playbook. I don't know who my weapons are going to be around me. I might not even know who my offensive coordinator is. And not saying that he has to declare anytime soon. He can take his sweet ass time. No one's saying he has to make a decision anytime soon. But those are part of the conversation though, because it's the unknown.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. I mean, personally, I don't think he stays. I think he does play in the bowl game because I think he needs that third good game of tape. And I think the bowl game that they're going to end up in is going to be one that's going to be watched a little bit more. It's going to be of more, I guess, importance, if you will. I also think, too, it kind of depends on who leaves and whatnot. I think Juice Wells is gone because he's put together one hell of a year. But I mean, Spencer, it just kind of depends, really. With Satterfield gone, you would have to learn a new playbook. Personally, like I said, I do think he's gone just because of the games that he's put together, and he's proven that he is the Spencer Rattler. Like he's had the games where he made sure that freshman year wasn't a fluke, and what he was doing, I guess, sophomore year. Now, granted, he got benched sophomore year, but the numbers that he was putting up at Oklahoma wasn't a fluke, and so he's been able to redo that. At South Carolina, there's no way he transfers. I mean, he loves it here, and like this is a spot that he wants to be in college and stuff like that. And I just think he likes Columbia too much. So I mean, his options are either go to the draft or stay here for another year. And Mike, I just think with so much turnover that he's gonna have to go to the draft. And because I mean, too, like those two games that he put together, Clemson and Tennessee, are unbelievable. Threw for over 300 yards in both of them. And it's a resume building, two resume building games. And then if he goes out and does anything relatively close to that in the bowl game, I mean, he's going to be if he goes out and does it in the bowl game, he'll be a third to sixth round pick, maybe even a late second round pick, Mike. I mean, I think his stock has just been going up and up and up these last couple of weeks. And I mean, going into Tennessee, we weren't even talking about it. We were like, is he going to get drafted? Maybe seventh round, maybe, undrafted free agent. But I mean, what he's done in the last 2 weeks has been insane. And I think if he goes out there and does anything close in the bowl game, it's only going to be beneficial. And then you're right. I think he will look good in shorts. And we saw that too this summer, mechanics wise. We were just watching him throw the football, and it's like, damn, man, that's a quarterback. And so the eye candy, if you will, that is Spencer Rattler's mechanics and shorts. He's got to have a good pro day regardless. So, I think he leaves personally, in my opinion, as much as we'd love to see him stick around for another year and do what he just did. I think all signs point to the draft for him.
I know Big Red asked, wouldn't an Arkansas offensive coach go more towards the run? Isn't that the opposite of what we're trying to do? At the end of the day, they're going to go with that pro-style offense, and it seems like that's what Beamer wants to do. They want to stay balanced. And when I hear balance, you hear every coach kind of say that, right? I want to stay balanced. Again, going back and just looking at some of this from Chris, if you guys want to go check it out, you can go check it out on Gamecock Central's page. I feel like based on the personnel Arkansas had, they were built to run the football. They were built to run the football. Now, they had playmakers where they could throw the football. I'm not saying that, but when you look at a KJ Jefferson, right? A guy that is capable of running the football. You look at some of the running backs that they do have with Sanders. They're a team that is capable of running the ball. Now, I think regardless, unless this is a team that's throwing the football, I think there's going to be a lot of people that are still going to be pissed off, Joe. Like, I don't know. I think some people have in their mind what they want this offense to look like, right? And don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it wouldn't be fun. If you had like a Joe Burrow situation a couple of years ago with LSU and you throw it into that's fun, okay? I just don't know if that's what Beamer's envisioning. When he came over from Oklahoma, I think there were some people in their mind, I'm not saying everybody, but I think in their mind, they were convinced that it was going to be a pass-happy offense. Pass happy. I think even this year going into it, people assume that with Rattler. Now, I think there's multiple layers as to why that didn't blossom into what some people hoped for, but they had to go to the run. And I feel like that's something they needed to do. I will say this, though. I never think it's a bad thing to be able to run the football. I feel like, and it's funny, I think back to a couple weeks ago, it was Nick Saban talking about playing Tennessee, and Tennessee was in a goal line situation. They went I formation. And Saban talked about this a couple days after the game. He said that there were some players on his team that literally said that next day in film or whenever they watch film on Monday and said, we didn't know what to do. So I bring that up because the game is evolving so much to airing it out, right? Instead of being played always between the tackles, it's, and I understand that it's fun being able to see an air it out show, but I still think you need to be able to run the football well. And there's something to be said about it. And as we saw with South Carolina, look, the other day, run game wasn't there, but you're also going up against a front where all those guys are going to get drafted. But what we saw against Tennessee, over 150 yards rushing, what happened? Well, South Carolina went out there and they threw the ball for what, Joe? Over 350 yards, 360 yards. So I say all that because you can still have the success in the passing game. You can still have this air it out type of offense if you're running the football well. And I think that, look, being able to score 63 points against Tennessee, everyone at the table got something, right? 13 receptions. I think even Rattler had a catch. But stuff like that, okay, that's video game numbers. But being able to try to have success in the passing game while still running it, I still think you can do that. And I think in Beamer's mind, I think that's what he's looking to go after.
Yeah, Mike, I think, too, like, you look at who – say Spencer leaves next year, right? So you have Doty and Tanner Bailey, and likely it's going to be Doty as the guy, but Tanner Bailey's going to make a shot at it for sure. But I think whoever does come in as offensive coordinator, obviously you want to stick to the pro style, and I think that will be the base of it all, right? But because that's what Doty knows, and that's kind of the base playbook that they're going after. But I think whoever is the new OC, they're going to design it around, what they have, what the weapons are. Marshawn will probably declare, and I don't know about CBS. I'm thinking he will. I don't know if he has eligibility left. I got to look at that. But it kind of just depends on where the weapons lie, and I think it will come down to just building the offense around that, right? And I think that's what the offense looks like. And with Doty being the guy in the case of Spencer leaving, I think people aren't necessarily looking at him as like, or super hopeful. I think Doty could step up and be a great piece for this offense. Not necessarily Spencer level, but, he's been in this offense. He's been working. He's rehabbed his injury. He's not, the last time we saw Luke Doty in action, he was hurt. He was banged up, and, he was with, it was Beamer's first year, right? Like, so that's the last time we saw Doty. He was in and out. He was hurt and whatnot, and he just he was not himself. And also, too, I saw Joey's comment. This is not a Notre Dame shirt. In all fairness, I will say that it's one of my favorite bars in Florida. So I know stay the air on that.
Intern Joe, after the Clemson game, for those of you that don't know, he had the ND helmet on. He's a South Bend kid, but it worked because Notre Dame beat Clemson that night. And he was wearing the ND shirt, and then, Gamecock, well, at least one or two Gamecock fans were like, why are you wearing an ND shirt? So if South Carolina does play Notre Dame in the bowl game, I am going to get that photo and say, Intern Joe just threw this on to begin the show. So everyone needs to play along. If you're on social media, you got to say, yep, Intern Joe just wore that. That's not from months ago. That's a funny comment. First phone call Beamer needs to make is to Mike Bobo to tell him he's not getting the job. Before we start talking about the whole stuff, and I do want to talk a little bit about the offensive line position from a coaching standpoint, because I also saw that get asked. But want to make sure that we hit our ads for today's program. I'm not as smooth as Chris and Wes when they do this, but today's program, as it always is, GC Live, is brought to you by our friends over at Liberty Tax. Tax season, you can never be too ready. And for Intern Joe, one day he's going to be a big boy. He's going to be just known as Joe, and he's going to have to deal with his taxes. And if he wants to overcome them, you can give Liberty Tax a call, 803-462-5576. And today's program is also brought to you by our good friend Clint Hammond at the Mortgage Network. Buying a home, it is not an easy thing to do. A lot of you listening to this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But especially now, especially with how the market is, it is an absolute circus. Well, don't worry. Got the ringleader right here, Glenn Hammond. He'll be able to help you out, make it a little bit easier. Giving him a call over at the Mortgage Network, 803-576-4450. Intern Joe's going to blow his nose. Intern Joe, I'll remove you so you can blow your nose. Hey, you know what? It's the changing of weather, Joe, okay? Blow your nose. Your mother would be so proud, you know? I will say this, though, about Greg Atkins. At this time, we've heard nothing. I know the health concerns are legitimate, but I think if anything were to happen, that would happen over the next couple of weeks. Again, I have not been told anything that makes me believe that Greg will be leaving, but that's not to say that he won't be. But that's kind of just where we are right now with everything. And then, mentioning Lembo, mentioning Justin Stepp, some of these coaches, yes, they will be getting bonuses, or at least you would assume a guy like Lembo is going to get a nice bonus. But we'll wait and see on some of that. I want to go through some of these comments, Joe. I do want to hit certain timelines, though. So, again, players can start officially entering into the portal on December 5th. That is next Monday. So, how it works is you have to submit your paperwork, right? Do all that. They will not show up in the database until December 5th at the earliest. Okay. So keep an eye on that. Keep that in your back pocket. Dead period. I alluded to at the beginning of the show. It is different this year in comparison to years past. Typically, you would see a lot of coaches after that Saturday game, Thanksgiving weekend, and they would go out, hit the recruiting trails. You'd see pictures on a Monday or Tuesday, we're at this high school or at that high school. Can't do that this year. Cannot do that. Dead period will be dropped on Friday. So you want to talk about the wild, wild west, be ready. That's one coach told me that I spoke to. They said, you're going to see coaches hitting the recruiting trail hard on Tuesday. So keep an eye on that. National Signing Day. I know this is still a new thing. With being able to have signing day, that first of two signing days for football, which obviously wasn't the case that long ago, but it's become the main signing day. Well, you got a nice Christmas treat because a couple of days before Christmas, on the 21st, signing day is a little bit later this year. That is when signing day is. So I'm bringing up all these dates, Joe, because we're here talking about, okay, Marcus Satterfield. We mentioned Riley. Riley would also be, want to make sure. What's that, Joe?
I said that's the guy. That's the guy.
Yep. I know you mentioned Garrett Riley. He's the younger brother of Shane Beamer's former boss, right, at Oklahoma. Riley has worked lately with veteran offensive line coach A.J. Ricker at SMU and TCU. Another interesting bit, given South Carolina's coaching situation on the O-line. So I bring that up because, some of the things that we were talking about before, you want the offensive line coach and the offensive coordinator to be on the same page. And again, nothing has happened with Greg Atkins right now, but in the event that could happen, having a offensive coordinator that has that rapport already with the offensive line coach would be huge. And you're able to get two guys that worked well together. We saw that when Mike Bobo was retained 2 years ago. He brought his good buddy over, Will Friend. Well, Will Friend, which it's still to me one of the funniest things that I've seen. And I still have the video up. Will Friend was here for what? A whopping 11 days? Okay. The video of Will Friend's introductory press conference, it would have been better if it wasn't during COVID. But because it was COVID, Will Friend's just on a couch. I think he's still wherever the hell he was coaching at before. He's just sitting on a couch. I'm real happy to be here at South Carolina, blah, blah, blah. Will Friend's gone in just over a week. So I bring that up, though, because obviously Bobo left too. They had a rapport together. They both went to Auburn. That would be huge. If that were to be the case. But I bring all this up about, okay, the offensive coordinator, offensive line coach, transfer portal. That National Signing Day is interesting, Joe. It's a little bit later. Around that time period is when contracts are going to start to expire for some of these coaches who are on 2-year deals. And I'm interested to see how quickly some of this stuff happens, because that's what I assume. I have a conversation later tonight with one of the guys that South Carolina is looking at, and I've talked to other prospects and other recruits by South Carolina, and they're telling me like, yeah, we're keeping an eye on this. Now, that's not to say you have to worry about being panicked or anything like that, but they're interested, and I bring that up because the coaches are well aware. Shane Beamer's well aware of that, which is another reason why, if there are changes to his staff, and maybe sometimes you don't know, maybe an NFL guy, right? A coach from the NFL, or excuse me, there's a head coach opening in the NFL, and he wants to bring someone from South Carolina. Stuff happens like that. You're not going to be able to control that. Okay. That just happens. But for the most part, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to put your core in place. You want to be able to show the recruits, especially before that National Signing Day period, what you're going to have on your table, right? I mean, that's like saying, like, all right, here's you want to go buy a new car, Joe? All right, you want to buy a new car? Great. Here, sign the paperwork. And you show up, and the car that you looked at a couple months ago, isn't the car you get once you sell it, once you buy it and they sell it to you. It's kind of like this. If South Carolina, and I'm sure Beamer's not, Beamer is a person of high character. He's not going to be trying to do any of this shady stuff that I've seen happen, even going back to my recruiting days of playing college football. He's going to try to be as upfront as possible. There's going to be some things that he cannot control, as we saw a couple of years ago with the Mike Bobo and Will Friend situation. But being able to have that offensive coordinator, and if it's an offensive line coach, if God forbid they want to go in another direction with O-line and move on from Greg Atkins, they're going to want to do that as quickly as possible. Why? Because they feel like, and they do, in my opinion, they owe that. They owe that to the prospects. They owe that to the players that are signing and committing to you on National Signing Day on the 21st. And the other thing, too, is this is a rat race. You want to make damn sure you get those players to sign on the dotted line. And even though you want to do that and you're trying to beat out some of these other schools who, yeah, maybe you have a commitment from this player or this player is leaning towards you. But that's not to say that they can't flip it and go to a Florida or go to one of these other schools. So from an ethical standpoint and from the reputation that you're building, you want to be able to get those players to sign and do it in a way that will build your reputation, build from an ethical standpoint. Because if you screw over a player like that, what's going to happen? Well, now your reputation's going to, it's going to be out there that you did some shady shit just to be able to get a kid to sign.
Yeah.
And
Mike,
I don't see Shane Beamer doing that one bit.
No, absolutely, Mike. And I mean, you brought up the rat race. It's as much of a rat race with the recruits as it is for the coaches, right? Like, we saw how quickly the Matt Rule thing developed. And I mean, we had always kind of believed in the media that, Satterfield was at least going to flirt with, if not already take the job wherever Matt Rule lands. And that thing just went quick as possible. I mean, it was done, signed, sealed, delivered in like a week. And he had Satterfield like the next day after Clemson. I think it was Sunday or Monday. The deal was signed and everything, and it was announced. So it's as much of a rat race for recruits as it is with coaches. I mean, you want to get these coaches in and signed, so that way when these recruits are signing on the dotted line, they know what they're signing into. And when you can get coaches in and sign them to their deals, it develops a level of consistency too. Because once you have them in the building, you can start building up again that the offense, number one, building trust within the players that are gonna stay, and it also too helps guys that, if you get the new OC in there, you can kind of preach to some of the guys that are maybe on the fence a little bit, and maybe give some of those guys a little confidence to stick around. Now, granted, I think a lot of the guys like Juice Wells and Spencer, their decisions will already be made up by the time a new offensive coordinator gets in. But a couple guys that are on the fence, it definitely helps. And two, I mean, I think, like I said, it helps with the culture, and the earlier they are in the building, the earlier you can kind of get things going and settle down, and the less you have to worry about picking up the scraps on the national level. And I think a guy like Garrett Riley, or even a guy like Graham Harrell or somebody, these guys that are national commodities in the college football world for new jobs, you got to act quickly and you got to throw them contract offers and get them signed because they're going to get snatched up somewhere else. Like I said, the rule situation just happened so fast. So you got to get it done. And it would be nice to have, a decent chunk of your staff settled in before signing day. So that way those guys know, everyone's on the same page and everyone knows what's going on, Mike.
Mm-hmm. To answer Keith's question, and I'm trying to do my best to be able to answer everyone's questions. I don't want to go super long tonight, but looks like we still have a good amount of people watching, so we appreciate that. Appreciate you guys tuning into GC Live Talking Tuesdays. We will we'll see what we'll do next week with this, because typically we're going to do this throughout the regular season, but based on the timeline, especially knowing that next Monday is the first day that the transfer portal opens up, I don't think it would be a bad thing to do one of these shows next week. I think we can plan on doing that, but stay tuned to that. But just throwing that out there, just in case you guys want to know before next week. Keith asked, do you think we get a quarterback in the portal for Rattler leaves? Based on my conversations with people close to the program, I'm under the impression that South Carolina does not want to go into the portal for a quarterback unless there's obviously this one quarterback that you can't say no to. I would not be shocked if Rattler were to leave, that could open up a spot, what you mentioned, the portal. Okay. But does a guy like Dante Reno possibly reclassify? Okay. That's obviously there's been rumbles going back to the day that Reno committed to South Carolina. There's a possibility that he does that. If not, if Rattler stays, I think Reno's going to, stay for the class of 24. But I'm bringing that up. But from everything I've been told, they would like to stay away from the portal unless they desperately need one. Or, again, there's a quarterback that you just cannot miss on. But because from what I've been told, they want to give Doty his opportunity. They want, and that goes right into what Travis brings up. Doty isn't judged fairly. I think he's played. They want to give Doty his opportunity. I know there's going to be some people that aren't going to be, maybe thrilled about that. But if Rattler's gone, they want to give Doty his opportunity. And like Travis said, look, the guy hasn't been healthy. He comes into a crap situation in 2020 when they only win 2 games. All right. Then the poor guy suffers a foot injury in 2021, and yet he's been nothing but positive. I think he deserves that opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely.
We can't do better than. Well, I don't know who Duty is. I think you meant Doty. They can definitely do better than Duty. We can get Doty. I'd like to see what Doty can do. He's
been in the system, Mike. He's been in the building, and they've kind of been, letting him, number one, heal up. But, I mean, all the talk coming out of the building about Luke Doty has been how unselfish he is, how great of a team player he is. Why not give him a shot, right? Like, he was so hyped coming in here. Yeah, I saw that. That was hilarious. I was laughing.
Well so hard. My friend.
Zachary, thank you.
Travis says, again, this year Doty was healthy and able to run, only 5. Yeah. Look, I wasn't expecting Doty to see the field in terms of meaningful snaps, and you prayed that he wouldn't have to, and that's not a slight against him. That would mean most likely that Rattler got hurt or Rattler just stunk it up to the point where you decided to go to Doty. And the other thing, too, is a lot of those lower body injuries, especially foot injuries, ankle injuries, knee injuries, we've seen this with other athletes. Coming back from them, it's not always I come back in that next year. It's sometimes that year after. Go look at some of the players that have got hurt. Nick Muse, Marshawn Lloyd, right? I know those more ACLs, but guys that have even had foot injuries. And, I mention that because a guy like Corey Rucker, the ceiling is so high for that young man. So high. And it's a shame that he had an early camp injury, came back, showed off a little bit of what he's capable of doing with that touchdown, and then he gets hurt again. Then he has to get surgery. I hope he can overcome that mental hurdle that comes with those lower body injuries, because sometimes when you're going out there, it could be for any injury, but especially knees, ankles, feet. You're thinking so much when you're out there. You're trying to compensate. So I hope that he can come back, but I bring that up because with Doty's situation, obviously not the same position as playing running back or wide receiver, but at the same time, too, an element of his game is being able to be a dual threat quarterback. And when he was hurt a year ago, we lost that element of his game a little bit. I wouldn't even say a little bit. We lost that element of his game, I'd say like 80%. I'd say 80%. He wasn't the same quarterback. He wasn't the same quarterback. So I bring that up because for people to sit here, and I see Justin bringing this up, for people to sit here and say, okay, Doty's not the guy. Well, we saw what he did a year ago. Did we, though? Did we? I mean, let's at least give the kid an opportunity to see what he can do. Plus, depending on what the offensive scheme is, I mean, that's another thing. All these people, I say, I know not everyone here, but some. All these people that were yapping and complaining about Mike Bobo's offense, okay? Bobo's gone. Okay, and then you were complaining about Satterfield. Satterfield's gone. Can you give the kid an opportunity if you keep saying it's the OC?
I mean, no, like you really can't. Like, so you gotta, or you have to keep playing Doty. Like, right, like I said, he's the guy. He's the default guy. He's next in line. And again, right, like with the whole regime change and everything and what we saw, obviously, like we saw him hurt in the COVID season. And so, like you said, Mike, I mean, you teed it up perfectly. Like you said it perfectly. That's why I was kind of at a loss for words because you said everything perfectly there. But like, yeah, he played on a bum foot. He's really had time to really rehab it, get to know this offense, and play under Spencer Rattler. They, coming in, Doty is like a similar quarterback, throwing on the run, a little bit more of a mobile guy out of high school. So playing underneath Spencer, number one, Spencer's a great leader. And I'm sure he's done a great job of, coaching Luke up and showing him how to, run the offense and be a leader on this offense. And two, they're similar quarterbacks. So there's, they're definitely exchanging information. How did you read this? How do you play this? And whatnot. Because, I mean, they're both very, very talented quarterbacks, and they both have a lot of weapons to offer from under center. Like I think Doty is a guy. I think Tanner Bailey's going to give him a run next year. I think Tanner Bailey's really he's going to be a great number two option, and could be a quarterback after Doty, depending on Doty's year next year. But I mean, I think by default, it's Doty. You got to give him a shot. You can't really, because I think the trust in Doty, goes down if you go out and get a guy from the portal. I think he might look elsewhere, look for himself for the portal if you go grab another quarterback from the portal like they did this year. And the reason why they did grab Spencer is because, again, like Doty's been hurt, he's been banged up, and he really never had any time to develop. So if you were to throw him back into the fire right there, obviously Spencer, Shane talked about it too, it was a little bit of a lottery ticket, really. He threw his name in there and started talking to him, and Spencer latched on and did it. And so I think it's Spencer coming here has been powerful for Doty too. But
so
I just think he's the next guy in line for sure.
So a couple of things. We're seeing a lot of quarterback questions right now. Justin brings up Doty's arm isn't, or comments as well. Doty's arm isn't Spencer's, but he's pretty solid. I'm not saying that Doty can't throw the football. Obviously, Rattler has an incredible arm. There's no question about it. I mean, the guy's arm is incredible. Like we said, pro day, he'll be he'll be one of the more impressive quarterbacks in the country during pro day. I don't know if he gets invited to the combine, and I see some people saying, "Oh, he should focus on the." I don't know if that's going to happen. But regardless, pro day, whenever he's out there throwing around, he's going to look good. With Doty, though, and that's not to say that Rattler didn't have the ability to scramble. We saw that. Doty brings that, though. It goes back to his days when he was in high school, when he was Mr. Football here in South Carolina. And a lot of people that have followed him going back to his high school days, you understand what he's capable of doing with both his feet. And that's not to say that he can't throw the football. Would Rattler benefit more from an NIL deal rather than the NFL this year? Well, I think it goes back to what the risk factor is, right? Is it a big risk going to the end? Now, based on what I think a lot of us are assuming right now, right? I'm sure Spencer has his camp. They're going to be told things, but based on what at least I think a lot of us are thinking, it would be a risk for Rattler to go. But the upside, of course, is you're in the NFL. You make a lot of money. Okay. Right. The risk of going too early, right, if it doesn't work out, you might not have that opportunity and you kind of just fizzle out depending on that timing of it. Maybe that journey to be a starting quarterback in the NFL, maybe it's a little bit longer. And you need some things to break your way. Now, coming back to South Carolina, there are risks as well. There's pros. The pros are you can increase your draft stock. Risk are, well, you come back. You could always get hurt. That's a possibility for any player, not just Router. That's something that goes back to well before NIL, right? That's always a risk for athletes. I mean, go ask Clowney. I mean, Clowney didn't even want to play one season, I believe, because he was all ready to go. So that's one. The other risk that you face, which we kind of hit on before, you don't know what this offense is going to look like because you're going to have a new offensive coordinator. You're going to have to learn a completely new offense. Now, that could be a pro, but it's also an unknown. And on top of that, you don't know who's going to be back here next season from a weapons standpoint. If, again, part of the unknown, if a guy like Jaheim Bell doesn't come back, if a guy like Juice Wells doesn't come back, if a guy like Marshawn Lloyd doesn't come back, there's going to be a lot of weapons that South Carolina could be losing.
Yeah.
So I bring all that up because from an NIL standpoint, I think it can entice more players to stick around an extra year or two. We used the example last year of Josh Vann. Not that Josh Vann was bringing in crazy amount of money, but, has the birth of his daughter. Does he decide, hey, I got to get money right now for her. I got to go pursue this. And even though it might be, I wouldn't say a long shot, but his NFL draft stock wasn't as high as I think it is now. I mean, obviously the injury kind of plays a role in things, but you hope that he's going to be healthy. But he's able to come back. He's able to at least get some money, though. And his family, I know, helps him out. But, as a man, and you could say this as a woman too, a lot of individuals, they want to be able to take care of their family. And I'm sure that was something that you look back, and I know Josh isn't the same example as another player, but there's some players that say, hey, I need to go get the money right now. I need to take care of my family. NIL, that changes the game a little bit. And that played a small part. And I think Josh kind of mentioned that going back to the spring. I think I actually asked him that at during media availability. I asked him that. And he's like, yeah, he's like, I really wasn't. I think I'm paraphrasing. That wasn't something I was really concerned about this past season, meaning the 2021 season. He's like, but yeah, I mean, the fact that it's out there, he's like, doesn't hurt. And then what do you want to say, Joe? Because I'm just going to go through these.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think for guys that like Juice Wells and Spencer, I don't necessarily think NIL ties in as much, but I mean, shout out Garnet Trust. I think Garnet Trust does a good job in, helping a lot of these guys that aren't necessarily on the national, stage or going to be a top 5-round pick. So NIL definitely plays into a lot of those guys' decisions too.
No question about it. I do want to, and I'm going to try to go through these quick, Joe. Okay, so if you got a quick thought, just let me know. We'll keep going through these. Big Red, does DK have eligibility? He does have an extra year of eligibility. He did walk at senior day, but that does not mean he is, number one, not coming back. That also does not mean that he cannot transfer anywhere. Both of those are on the table. And the third one, of course, is he can either just leave South Carolina altogether and either declare or just walk away from football. Travis Edwards says 90% of college QBs don't have Rattler's arm. Yep, I would agree with that. A little Boston accent there saying huh? No, I don't think Joe Brady's a possibility. I do think this. I do think, even though I do believe the job is more intriguing at South Carolina, one thing that always makes me laugh when job openings pop up is how some people think South Carolina is just going to be able to get everybody. Maybe this person will come. Maybe that's. I don't see Joe Brady coming. Justin Simmons, arm strength is important, but so is touch. No question about it. I know we have not mentioned this. Have we mentioned how badly Kai Kroger got shafted? No, we haven't. We haven't. And Lembo. Look, I'll say this about Lembo. And I think we can talk about it from a financial standpoint before we wrap things up too.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that a special teams coordinator for an 8-4 team got left out. Okay. I think people that have been paying attention to South Carolina the way that, of course, we do, and the people that are watching, we know the value that Pete has. There's a lot of people in the football universe that pay attention to college football that know the impact that he has. But in a sense, and it's not true apples to apples, but kind of like the Heisman Trophy, right? There's players out there that have phenomenal seasons. Phenomenal seasons. They get lost in the shuffle sometimes. Why? Because they're not on a team that is one of the better teams in the country. So again, even though that's not what this award is about, when you look at the finals, I believe there's 5. When you look at the finalists, I believe 4 of the 5 coaches are on teams right now who are in the mix for the college football playoff. You see what I'm trying to get at? I think Illinois is the only other school that represents that list. So I just bring that up because I think unfortunately Lembo was going to have a difficult time just based on the success of South Carolina. Even though when we talk about success from a historical standpoint for South Carolina, this has been one of the better seasons. Again, 13th season in the 100-plus year history of South Carolina. They've had 8 wins or more in the regular season. So I bring that up. As far as Kai goes, I mean, look, here's the thing about Kai. Here's the thing about Kai that drives me nuts. It seemed like every week he was up for one of the Ray Guy 8 each week, okay? On top of that, led the SEC in punt yards, second in the nation in punt average, okay? And I'm probably butchering some of these guys' names. Corsack from Rutgers and Fletcher from Cincinnati. Those are 2 of the 3 guys that are on this list. Kai averaged more yards per punt than both those guys. He had a higher percentage of downing punts inside the 20 than all 3 of the guys on that list. And oh, by the way, the other day, he had 5 against Clemson of those 7 punts. And I think there were 4 inside the 10, if not 5 all inside the 10. I mean, there was like 1 at the 1, 2 in the 3. You know, you get what I'm getting at. Never mind the fact of what he's done. Never mind of what he's done from a passing standpoint. Okay. And I know that doesn't get always factored in, right? It's the highest, has the higher QBR. I know that doesn't always get factored in. But I mean, the point being is this guy is one of I've said this before. South Carolina is not 8-4 if they don't have Kai Kroger in the team. They're not. They could they don't win this game against Clemson. Okay. Without Kai Kroger, they don't beat Clemson. I'd argue that, I mean, special teams in general against Georgia State week 1, Mitch Jeter played a big role. But I'd say there's probably at least 2, if not 3 games. I mean, we could say special teams. Special teams as a whole, South Carolina probably loses 4 games if their special teams isn't on. If they don't have Mitch Jeter and Kai Kroger, they probably lose 4 of those games. But there's probably at least 2, if not 3 games South Carolina doesn't win without Kai Kroger. And I'd be lying to you if I said I've been paying attention to Rutgers and Cincinnati. But I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, Mike. I mean, you're right. I mean, Kai Kroger is arguably the best punter in the country. I don't necessarily understand it. I mean, the only explanation that I can really give is that, they didn't punt much in the Tennessee game. So nobody, that was the first game that was really on. I mean, minus the Georgia game, but even Georgia was on SEC Network, I believe. But they didn't punt much against Tennessee. And, I mean, obviously Clemson was a nationally televised game, so that was a big one. They don't win that game. Another game I wanted to bring up was Kentucky. That was where, Kai Kroger really, really, excelled and really bounced onto the scene, I guess, in terms of the SEC. That's where people got to know who Kai Kroger was on the SEC scale, one of his best games of the year. And throwing the ball, too. I loved the comment about the QBR. He's on the hands team as well, not to mention.
Yes.
Shout out Colin Taylor for bringing that up again.
How many punters are on the hands team?
I know, it's crazy. And, he played a little bit at Lake Forest back in Illinois, back over there in Chicago. And so, I mean, Kai Kroger is one of the most talented punters in the country, and let alone he hits nukes. I mean,
I will say this: the QBR stat, the hands team, that it's all incredible. It's never going to get factored into this.
No,
And
absolutely
honestly, it shouldn't. I know,
it's cool.
The thing about the QBR factor, it's like it is part of the position, right? I mean, doing fake punts and stuff. So I mean, you can make an argument for that. One thing I do want to bring up though that we haven't hit on, if South Carolina does move on from Greg Atkins, which again, nothing has indicated that they will at this time, but if they were, we know that Lonnie has played a role. He's done a great job of filling in Joe with the offensive line coach position. Certainly that would be a position, I'm sure, that USC could look to hire internally. But again, mentioning Garrett Riley's name, it all depends on number one, well, what happens with Greg Atkins? Is he back next season or not? Is he in a position from a health standpoint to be back next season? I can tell you Greg is someone that I don't feel like gets – I think Greg catches some strays that he doesn't, I think Greg gets a bad rap at times. I really do. Because it's easy to sit here and point at the offensive line when there were issues with the offense as a whole for portions of the season. And then, there were times the offensive line did a good job and he was still there. And this goes back to last year too. And then, of course, Lonnie did a great job filling in when he got his number called. Let's see. Now, intern Joe, he has the same number of punts as the dude from Michigan State. And yeah, it's I
mean, I think he deserves to be a finalist. And like, I also think like he should win the award, arguably. Kind of just watching. I mean, my little brother goes to Rutgers, so I know they punt plenty based on his recaps of some of these games. But I think he deserves to be a finalist at the very least. Definitely in contention for it. And same goes on my little piece on Lembo. He at least deserves to be a finalist for the award. And granted, no special teams coaches really made it to the finalists, but I think just what Lembo has done in embracing the Beamer ball thing, I think that's worth recognition. But I mean, Travis, to go to your point, I think impact certainly plays into it. And I think, to an extent, I think the QBR and all of that stuff definitely, plays in, but it's probably a minute factor. I mean, it's the award for the nation's best punter. So, I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm speaking nonsense here. I don't know.
Well, and I do want to bring this up too about Lembo, and we'll wrap things up in a second because you mentioned about Lembo, and I said I was going to do this. And this actually is going to be part of my article tomorrow that we're going to have on Gamecock Central, so I don't want to go too deep with it. But a lot of people I've seen, they say pay Lembo. No question about it. Lembo, I believe, was at $465,000 he made this season. I think it was $450 when he first came in, $465,000 this past year. To give you an idea, and this is what I shared on Gamecock Central on the message board, I believe it was yesterday. I'm going to go into it deeper tomorrow, though, if you want to see a deeper dive. I've seen a lot of people throw out the number 1 million, okay? To give you an idea, all the special teams coaches in the country, okay? There's only one coach in the country that coaches special teams who also holds a title that has the word head coach in it, right? Associate head coach, assistant head coach. In this case, he's an assistant head coach. He's at Texas. That's Jeff Banks. Jeff Banks, he makes, or this past season, $1.05 million, okay? So I bring that up, and next year he's going to make $1.1 million. That's what he's at least, on track to get paid unless they, change the contract up. He makes more, whatever the case may be. But right now, $1.1 million for next season. The second highest paid special teams coordinator, Joe. Did you see this post by me? Because if you did, if you didn't see this, this will be better. You haven't seen it?
I've not seen it yet, but I'll put it up.
Take a guess. What school pays the second highest paid special teams coordinator in the country?
I mean, my first guess would be Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's a private institution. So first guess, maybe Clemson. I don't know. I really don't necessarily know. Bama. I don't know.
Clemson's Mike Reed makes the second most money out of any special teams coordinator in the country. He makes $750,000. So I bring that up.
It's a lot of money.
And I know there were some people that hated on the muddle huddle. I like the muddle huddle. I understood what they were trying to do. I like the muddle huddle. They didn't fumble because of the muddle huddle. They fumbled because the freaking guy couldn't hold on to the damn ball.
Too fancy with it, Mike.
Well, you know what? It's there was if they were able to break that and have a big return, then everyone's talking about something different, right? But anyway.
Yeah.
Muddle huddle aside. Muddle huddle. Lembo needs to make more money than Mike Reed. Okay. Mike Reed's done a very nice job with their special teams. And if you pay attention to Clemson football, not the same way I'm asking you to say pay attention to the Gamecocks, but they've done a nice job. I know in that game it didn't look that way, but he has done a nice job. They have one of the better place kickers in the country too. And he's been very good over the last couple of years. But I bring that up because as good of a job as he's done, you can't look me in the face and tell me that Lembo has not done a better job than him. You can't say that Lembo doesn't deserve more than him. Never mind just the fact of what he brings to the table from a special team standpoint, but the fact of what he brings to a program because he has that head coaching experience. And what he's proven in 2 years, the value that he brings to this program. The only way the muddle huddled because Dad was trying to look cute. Yeah, look,
it was in a bad spot, Mike. It just didn't make any sense for that spot. The game was like close.
I think bottom line, it's over with, and it backfired on them.
Yes.
If they break that though, that could have been the nail in the coffin. I really do think that because at that point, it's South Carolina was like they were throwing haymakers at that point. It was back and forth. You get the safety. If South Carolina gave up a touchdown on that drive, whether it be a long return, it could have been inflating. Now, I don't disagree, and I don't really want to spend too much time talking about the freaking muddle huddle all night. But the whole point being is I do think it goes back to what SC Scout Guy was saying. It's certainly hard to disagree with the fact that they were trying to get cute, especially with the whole Beamer ball thing.
Part of the game plan for sure to do something cute on special teams. And I think you throw the bag at Lembo, right? You pay him whatever he wants because he could just as easily take a head coaching job elsewhere. I mean, Mike, I saw your tweet about the Towson job. Like, Lembo has options too. And so let's not forget that. And I think Lembo has been, number one, a morale thing. Like, they love him in that building. He's hilarious. But two, what he's done on special teams and his focus and his ability to really hone in on special teams and make it, up to the Beamer ball billing, it's huge for the program. For sure.
And this is going to happen when you have success. We've talked about this before in the past. When you have success, other schools, right? Could be a pro team too in there, but other schools are going to look at you and they're going to want you to be either their head coach, their CEO, or they're going to want you to be part of their staff. Now, I know some people, and that's why I reached out to a couple people to get clarity on the Lembo situation. If you don't know what the hell we're talking about, there were rumors circulating on Monday. And this got to a point where I was getting phone calls from other coaches in the college world asking me, hey, have you heard about this? Because that's how I found out about it. I got a phone call from a college coach at the FCS level who's actually in the same conference. So I'm not going to be surprised if Lembo gets back into a head coaching role at some point down the road. When that is, I think that's tough to say. I think he's talented enough to be able to do a little bit better than the Townsend rumor. And again, if you missed that, there was rumors out there that Lembo was talking to Townsend. That is false. Lembo is not pursuing the Townsend job, as we reported yesterday on Gamecock Central. But I bring that up because that's going to happen when you have success, right? Think about it last year. Clayton White put a phenomenal game plan together to be able to fix this program. And what happened? His name was in the mix. And a lot of these coaches, I think Justin Stepp was too, they don't like talking about it. And it's something that we asked them, I think, in the spring, right? We're in these other schools looking at you, this and that. I know Justin Stepp, a couple schools were looking at him. I know Clayton White, a couple schools were looking at him. That's what happens when you have success. That's what happens. What did Travis say? If Lembo leaves, Mike, throw your hands in the hat. Look, hey, the NE10 Special Teams Player of the Week, my junior year, Joe. We can do it again, baby.
Oh no,
I actually do. It's the funniest thing is, Joe, you talk right now. Talk for a little bit. I'm going to bring something.
All right. So yeah, I mean, I think obviously you throw the bag at Lembo, right? Like I know SC Scout guy. I mean, I love the take. Like Pete Lembo is awesome. He's a fantastic person. He's hilarious. Like I look forward to his his pressers every week. Every time Fink lets him talk, it's the best. So I mean, I think on the case of Lembo, like you got to throw the bag at him, right? Like you have to try to do your best to extend him, and I think he kind of wants to be here. With the success that he's having and the recognition that he's getting, he's appreciated on the staff. I don't necessarily know. I'm sure at first he was appreciated and everything, but I mean, yeah, Mike, I mean, I think you have to throw the bag at Lembo for sure. He's as crucial to his staff as anybody else. Clayton White is, or even Shane for that matter.
I love how this actually is like becoming a little bit of a conversation, I will say this, and I know we're kind of joking here. But if I wasn't doing this, I would have got into coaching. My dad's finishing up his 39th year of high school football. Shout out to Coach Uva. He's got the D1, which is the highest in Massachusetts, D1 state championship on Saturday at Gillette Stadium, trying to win his 5th Super Bowl title. They call them Super Bowls up here. But this is the book that I have. How about this? The Complete Guide to Special Teams, forward by Frank Beamer. So it's funny because I've had this book for so long, and the things that I've drawn up over the years, So
it's conversation now, Mike. Come on,
it's
now.
Funny. It's just funny though because what Lembo has done. It's funny because everyone thinks of Beamer ball, and rightfully so. And that's not to take anything away from Shane Beamer because, yes, of course, when people think Beamer ball, they think Frank Beamer, okay? Shane has had a nice little career, though, on special teams. No question about it. And he's played the position before. He was a long snapper at Virginia Tech. But I bring all that up because having him, having Pete Lembo, having those guys work together, they've been able to do things from a special team standpoint, which is really, I mean, we know they're number one in efficiency, but it's really just took them over the top. And another guy, too, that deserves to get recognized for South Carolina special teams is Stanton Weber. Stanton Weber, he's the USC special teams analyst. He has been absolutely incredible. He's not going to get the recognition like Lembo. He's not going to get the recognition like Beamer, obviously the head coach. But Stanton has done an absolutely incredible job. And I think that's a guy that, look, you hope that Lembo's here for a long, long time. I don't know how long they're going to be able to keep Stanton there, though. I mean, Stanton could be gone after this year for all I know. I don't know that for certain. But think about that. The job that South Carolina has done this year, you're a guy like Stanton. If a team offers you a special teams coordinator position, and there's some real good money that comes with it because they see the job that you're doing over at South Carolina. And I'm sure Lembo and Beamer would put a very good reference letter in for him.
Well, I mean, one thing Beamer said last week, too, was that, he said, I would coach special teams if I couldn't get Lembo. He said, I wanted Pete Lembo. There's a reason why, I didn't, or I'm not coaching special teams right now. It's because I wanted Pete Lembo. And he's like, had I not gotten Pete Lembo, I'd be doing it myself. with my background in special teams, everyone was saying, why don't you just coach it yourself? He's like, because I wanted Pete Lembo. And that's the only guy in the country, to our knowledge, that, he was going after. And obviously he got him. And we're seeing why Shane wanted him so badly. Like, Pete Lembo is that guy in terms of special teams. His attention to detail is ridiculous. And I think his former experience as being a head coach definitely helps out with this. And he puts a head coaching level of, time and process into special teams. And, Pete has perfected the art of special teams, and it's only getting better and better and better. As I've seen the comments that are saying, like, they wouldn't have won 8 games without special teams. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. The special teams unit, and I love it too, because it's a bunch of role players. Special teams is the guys that, are getting their shot to play, their crack at the field. And so with special teams being such a big deal on this team, it says so much about the culture. It says so much about what Beamer's building and everything. Like, I think special teams leading the way. And again, like we said, the age-old Beamer ball, like Frank Beamer, trademarked it, really. And so I think Pete Lembo is a perfect guy for the job to keep that rolling. And, it's the reason why Shane's not coaching it himself, is because he really wanted Pete Lembo, and he got him. And now we're seeing why.
No question about it, Joe. No question about it. I see one more comment from SC Scout Guy. We appreciate you, buddy, watching our show all season long. Lembo has also been a head coach before. Yep, he was at Lehigh. It doesn't – Lembo, I'll put it this way, and I had a little bit of this in my story yesterday that I put on Gamecock Central. But Lembo is in his 31st season of coaching college football. Of those 31 years, 15 of them he's been a head coach. Think about that. 15 of those 31 seasons, nearly half of his coaching career, he's been a head coach. So the majority of his coaching career, he knows, as we get a lady women's basketball, and I'm not. They don't like going by the phrase Lady Gamecocks. That's why I was trying not to say it. I was reading it, though. They're down by 3 right now to UCLA. Okay, we appreciate that. Happy. Yep. But I bring that up because this is the majority of his coaching career. He's been a head coach. He's had success. You go back to the days when he was in the Patriot League, and for those of you that, for whatever reason, don't know the teams in the Patriot League, you had Bucknell, Lehigh, Holy Cross is in it, Georgetown, Fordham. But I bring that up because he was the Patriot League Coach of the Year in 2001, which, as we all know, was not an easy season to coach by any means. And I know every team in the country is dealing with that, but I mean, man, I can only imagine what that would have been like coaching during that season. But his head coaching record, 112-65. Okay. The guy knows how to coach. South Carolina continues to have success. Yes, his name is going to continue to get brought up. It's just part of it. All right, intern Joe, we're going to wrap things up here. It was a late one, a little bit later than I thought we were going to do tonight. I know, but you know what, though? There's a lot going on. And I know we didn't go super deep down the list of names as to who South Carolina could be pursuing. But if you guys want to take a look at that, head on over to Gamecock Central. Again, my colleague, Chris Clark, he did an absolutely outstanding job. Offensive coordinator, Hotboard 2.0. Lamb Cohen is another guy to bring up. I have heard about Lamb. I believe he was actually going to go to Holy Cross to join my old college coach. And then right before that, he went over to the Rams. He was at Kentucky running their offense in 2001. Then he reunited with the Rams in 2022. So again, we'll have to wait and see how that all plays out. But that's going to do it here for GC Live Talking Tuesday nights. Hope you guys have a terrific week. And the next time we talk, it will be December. And we'll get ready to get you all caught up on what takes place on Monday. Again, Monday is the official first day the transfer portal will open. And I'm not speaking just South Carolina. I'm speaking college football. The floodgates are going to open up. And we will get you caught up and we will do a show on Tuesday night so that we can get you updated as to anyone who could be possibly leaving or any possible players as to, might want to keep your eyes on. And then if there's any updates as far as coaching is concerned, right, whether it be offensive line or an OC hire or any of that, we will get you caught up on that as well. He's Intern Joe. I'm Mike Yuba. You guys have been watching GC Live Talking Tuesday nights. Have yourself a good evening.